Sky replacement in Photoshop just got a whole lot easier. I'm in the updated version of Photoshop 2021, and some of you will remember that about a year ago I shared a plugin for Photoshop called Luminar Pro, and I showed you how you could replace skies using this plugin. It was about $150, and it did have its limitations, and it was annoying because you had to go out of Photoshop to use it, and it definitely had its limitations, and there was a lot of tweaking, and there was some things that it couldn't do. Now, Photoshop has come in and just blown Luminar Pro out of the water and created its own AI sky replacement. So if you've ever been in a situation where you've taken a shot and like Mother Nature didn't play nice and gave you sort of the skies were just grey and nothing and a bit caca, like this sky here, it's a nothing sky. It's a perfectly common sky that you see. You only get the good skies every now and then, but this is like it's overcast, it's grey, there's no real detail, nothing to write home about. Now, with one click, you can change those skies in Photoshop to whatever you want. You can have Disneyland types of skies. You can have wispy clouds. You can bring in some kind of sunset, moody, dramatic, and completely transform your images without having to go to all the trouble of masking that image out. And you can also use your own skies if you want to, and you can do things like flip the skies around and change the position of the skies and do so many great things. So what I want to show you now is exactly how you do it, and how fantastic this actual development is for everyone who loves changing skies or creating composites. So to use the Photoshop 2021 version AI sky replacement, first thing you need to do is open an image, and I've deliberately chosen an image here that is, there's a lot going on in the background of this image. Now, if you were to select and cut out and mask out this background to apply a new background, you've got a lot of work there. There's all the birds and everything. So I want to show you just how good this Photoshop AI sky replacement is. So I've got my image open, and I'm going to go to Edit and come down here to Sky Replacement. Click on that. We're going to get a whole new dialog box that comes up. Now, the first sky that I've selected has popped up. It's that fast as well. And have a look at how well it, like all the birds have been etched out and around the model there in the shot, and it does a great job. So what you've got here, let me just show you this dialog box, is up the top here, you've got your sky selections. All right, so that's the place symbol. And so you can scroll down, and I've already loaded in my skies, but what you'll find is Photoshop will have these skies as defaults, and they're grouped into different folders. Okay, so you come with sunsets, spectacular, and blue skies. And you've also got the option here, there's a little plus symbol where you can load in your own skies. So I've loaded mine in already, and you can also rename the folders. You just go to this little gear icon here up at the top, and you can create a new sky group if you want, and you get the opportunity to name that. So what I suggest you do is, as you're out and about shooting and you see spectacular skies, just put your widest lens on and take a shot. Take a shot of all these skies, bracket by half a stop either way, so you can get a little bit overexposed, underexposed, and somewhere in between, and start collecting your own skies. Because what you're going to find is this: if everyone's using the generic Photoshop skies, you'll start to see that everyone's got the same skies in their shots. So that's what you can do to form your own new sky group as well. And so you can then decide, you can scroll down. Now, some of them obviously just look silly. And what you want to consider as well when you're looking for the skies is what direction the existing light in the shot is, and you want to match that. And you also want to match the mood and the vibe of the shot. So if I've got something dark and moody, something like a bright poppy sky, or like, these Hollywood clouds, just looks silly. It looks really Disney to me and fake. So what you want to do is choose, like I like the spectacular skies. Something dark and moody works a lot better. And as well, I'm also making sure that the direction of the light is the same as the direction of the light in my master shot. So you can see that the light in this image is going from camera left to camera right. I can tell by the shadow created, and the original shot was taken early morning, was sort of overcast, flat-ish light. So in this instance, something with the light coming from camera left to camera right will also work. But it also, you want it to fit in with the mood of the shot as well. So you might want something like dark and moody like that, which I think that something like this works. And you can see that Photoshop has done a great job at cutting out around all the birds there. And then you've got some other options here. So I'm just going to zoom in. So as a default, this is how all your sliders are going to be set. And I can now shift the edge. So if I go to the left, you can see that we've moved the edge away from the person and all the details. So if you're finding that you're getting the sky is encroaching on your background, then just use that shift edge and that'll clean it up. So I can go all the way to the other side, and you can see that now the edge is creeping into my foreground. So I just can move that back, and I'm looking at this area here. I'm looking at the mustache, and I want to get sort of something that looks still natural, because I've got options afterwards. Once I've picked my sky, this is the beauty of this over something like the Luminar Pro preset that you can add on afterwards. This is far superior. So, once I'm happy with that, I can play around with the shift edge, and I can also fade the edge, which also is kind of like feathering away from your edges as well. So you can play around and adjust that. You can also adjust the brightness or darkness of your sky with this slider here. Now, even if you don't want to adjust the brightness or the darkness, I suggest you just do like a slight tweak, and I'll show you why in a minute, but I just adjust slightly. So I might just make it a bit darker there, and you can also change the temperature. So if the sky is a little bit cooler than your foreground, you can warm it up a bit, or you can cool it down a bit. So the whole thing that you're looking for is to match foreground with your background. So I might just add a little bit of warmth to that. And again, these can all be edited down the track. The scale is I can change the size of my sky. So if I come all the way to the left, you can see that it's actually just an image that's in the background, and I can scale this up and make it fit into my frame a little bit better like that. So that's what that does. Flip, if I find a background that's got distinctive lighting, so let me just put this one in. So you can see this is going, the light in the sky here is from camera left to right, so that the light is going in this direction, left to right, which matches the lighting on my figure here. But if that wasn't the case, I could easily, if I wanted to flip it the other way, I could easily do that just by hitting this little flip. Okay, and it flips the entire background around the opposite way, and now my light in the background is going from camera right to camera left. All right, so I'm just going to flip it back to there, and I'm also going to go back to my dark and moody sky that I had before. Okay, and you can also, the lighting, you can change the blend mode. So you've got either multiply or screen. And you can see in this instance that screen, I've got these little halos around all my birds. So in this situation, multiply looks better. But what I recommend that you do is you just toggle down to this drop-down menu and test both. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for like halos and how well that sky blends in depending on the blend mode. So you can see that multiply is absolutely beautiful for this particular background. Now, lighting adjustments, these are all foreground adjustments. You can see that these are all separate. So these are the original image, what's in the foreground. And so you can change the lighting, so I can make it moodier or brighter. And again, it's what you want to be able to make the two images look like they belong together. And I can also change the color of the foreground as well. And finally, you've got a choice, output to new layer or a duplicate layer. I choose new layer, and then this little toggle on and off to preview what your sky looks like. And so I always select new layer and hit OK, and I want to show you what happens here. So this is where Photoshop is just killing Luminar Pro and its AI sky replacement, because if you remember in the tutorial that I shared with you, I said it's good, but it's got its limitations. It's not, I wasn't all that excited. There was instances where it worked well, but it was still a bit clunky in my opinion. Here and of course I had issues with it crashing and all sorts of things. So it was okay. This is so much better. So what Photoshop has done is it's created a new folder with the sky replacement up above my original image, and I've got all the settings here as layer masks that I can now tweak if I want to. So here is my original, the sky that I've replaced, and here's the layer mask. So if you find that there are areas that you want to either take away, because I can see there's a little bit of an area here next to the next. So let's say if I wanted to fix that, I could come in and remask that by using select and mask, or I could just get a little brush here, change the foreground color, just bring my brush size down a little bit, and I can come in and just paint that area if I want to remove, so you can see what's underneath. I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger. So you can see I can remove sections, or if I change that foreground color to white, I can bring that back in. So that's the original sky there, and I can mask that in easily using the mask. And again, I can go to X and remove what I just did. All right, and I now can, if I want to come in and control what I'm allowing to be seen and not seen, is I can just bring my flow down to, let's say I bring it to say 30%, and now I'll bring my foreground color again to white, and I'm brushing on that layer mask, and it's bringing it back in, but not as saturated or dense. So that's what you can do with the layer mask, and you can do some advanced editing and really refine the selection. The other great thing that you get is, remember how I said, you know, even if you don't think you want to brighten or lighten, darken the sky, just do it, tweak it a little bit, because what happens is the minute you start adjusting the brightness or darkness, Photoshop is going to give you an adjustment layer mask with that selection, so that you can come back in, click on that, and you can come back and re-edit that later as you work on your shot, which I think is fantastic to have that. And I can increase the contrast, and you can really work on your shot once it's in position. And I can do the same with the color. Now I can tweak the sky, I can make it warmer, I can make it cooler, I can go to town. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how that all works. And then you've got it all up on its own layer, so you can see before and after. So I think it's pretty good. So now I want to show you another technique that you can use this with, and some little workarounds with some of the issues I've had with this particular AI sky replacement. All right, so here's an image which is perfect for sky replacement. So on the day that I shot this, it was just a really kind of boring, nothing sky, just a blue sky. It wasn't even a great sunset. And so I can use the Photoshop sky replacement and bring in the sunset that I want. Now, the issue is, what it's not doing just yet is taking into account that I've got water here, which is actually a reflective surface. And so if I was to add this beautiful sky and not do anything with the water, it's going to look fake. So, you know, I've managed to match the light. It's coming from camera right to camera left, and that all matches, but here it's kind of problematic. So what I want to show you guys is how you can add an overlay of this actual sky using this technique, just to make this really sell the idea of that this is a in fact not a composite, but the real deal. Because what you want to do is try and make it look as realistic as possible, and you do need some highlights and a little bit of color reflected in the water. So let's have a look at how I did this particular edit from start to finish. So first thing I need to do is make sure I've got my image opened in Photoshop, and what I'm going to do is duplicate that. So just make a copy, and I'm going to work on this top copy here. So I'm going to go to Edit, Sky Replacement. Okay, and then I can now scroll through all the different scenarios here. Okay, so I've got blue skies that don't really suit the moodiness of the image. The sort of Hollywood clouds don't really suit this either. And so what I do before I do anything is I just scroll through and think, oh, does it look real? Definitely not. Maybe a moody sky if I wanted to, or some sort of a bit of a sunset. That's not bad, but I think it's this one that I really like. It seems to match the image, and it really brings this image to life. It really gives it depth and another dimension. You can see that it's like Photoshop has done a really good job at cutting out the image here, and I've even got that boat left in the background. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to come in and just make sure that it's fixed it's cut out the hair nice and evenly as well. And what I can do is I'll just drop the temperature a little bit, and I'll just drop the brightness a little bit just so it all matches. All right, and color looks good. Everything else looks good. Let's have a look at what happens if I shift this edge a little bit. That's helping as well. And we'll just fade the edge a little bit just so it all fits in, and that all looks good to me. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going out to a new layer. All right, so Photoshop has now organized in a folder everything that I've just done, the adjustments to the foreground, the foreground lighting. Here's my sky, and here are the color temperatures. Now I'm going to come in and have a play around with that, because I don't like the brightness of some of these reds here. So I might just knock that back a fraction so that it's not quite as, and just going to warm it up a little bit. All right, so once I'm happy with that, what I want to do now is take this sky, this AI replacement sky that Photoshop has given me, and use it as an overlay for the water. Now, the best way to do this is, my little workaround is select the sky layer. Photoshop even names it for you. So I know this is my sky layer because it says sky. And what I'm going to do is edit, copy, or if you want the shortcut, it's Command C. So I'm going to make a copy of that. Now I'm going to close my sky replacement layer and make sure that I've got the group selected, and then I'm going to come back to edit and hit paste. Command V is the shortcut. So I hit paste, and now I've got that new layer above my sky replacement. So if I pick the move tool, I can move that around wherever I want. But the problem is it's still got that original layer mask. I don't need that, so I'm going to delete that layer mask. So now I've got that sky, the original sky that I've used in the background. I've now got that as its own layer. And so what I can do is I can now place that on top of the water. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is come to edit, and then I'm going to hit transform, and I need distort. Okay, so I've got all these little handles here, and what I'm going to do is just grab this top handle and flip it. Okay, and so what I've done is I've just flipped it, and now I'm going to line it up with the background here and pull out these little handles so that I match sort of the angle of the water. Okay, and so there it is sitting on the water. I'm just going to go up a little bit because I'm going to get rid of this little area. There seems to be some sort of landscape still on the sky. So I'm just going to raise it a little bit, and just to see what I'm doing, I've just reduced the opacity. So something like about there should work. Okay, so I've got that. Now I can raise that, and next thing I want to do is make it look like this sky is sitting on the water, and the way to do that is just change the blend mode, and I can try overlay. Actually, once I've done my transformation, I want to click OK, and now I can preview the different overlays. So overlay looks okay, so does soft light. So I think I'm going to go, let me have a look at screen lightens it. So I'm going to stick to overlay for this one. So I'm just popping that color, and it blends in with the ripples in the water. It starts to look more realistic. Now, the next thing we need to do is you'll notice that the sky is also on my fisherman here, and it's in areas that I don't want it. So what I'm going to do is come back to my layer copy, and I'm just going to turn this off for the moment. What I want to do is mask him out really quickly, and the new Photoshop has actually gotten a whole lot better at masking, but what I suggest that you pick is the object selection tool. I can also do select subject. So if I just, with the original layer selected. If I select the subject, Photoshop is going to go ahead and choose him. Now, the other way that you can do it, is I'll just deselect that, is if you go into the tools where there is the magic wand and the quick select, there is another tool called the object selection tool, and I can now trace around the area. Actually, I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. And I've now selected my fisherman here, and what I can do is come back to my sky layer with that selection and then just hit layer mask, and what's happened is I've lost the reflection on the water because the layer mask has selected my fisherman. So in order to select the water, what I need to do is invert that layer mask. So make it the opposite so that the selection is everywhere else except for the sailor, my fisherman. So Command I inverts my layer mask, and now I've deselected him and I've got the sky overlay on the water. Now you can see there's still a few issues. So what I can do now is come in with white as my black as my foreground color, okay? With a brush, blend mode normal. I've got 0 hardness on the brush, opacity 100%, and I'm going to start with a low flow of 30%, and I can come in with my brush, and what I want to do is get rid of this part of the mask so that it blends in, and I'll make my brush nice and big, and I'm just going to basically clean up this mask. Okay, so I'm just getting rid of that extra bit that was there. So, and I can also, I want to mask out the area where it's like you can see that there's part of the boat here. And this is the beauty of mask. You can just take your time and sort of just clean up these areas here and make sure that everything that needs to be selected is selected. Okay, so now I've got this nice clean horizon line, and I've got this lovely, these clouds that were in the sky are now reflected in the water, and it sort of sells the whole image a lot better because it's realistic. If you've got a beautiful sunshine, you're always going to have some color reflected in the water, and if that looks a little bit too heavy, what I can do is just reduce the opacity until I think it looks a bit more realistic. So something like that. And if I want to go up another level, I can also right click on the layer, hit blending options, and I can choose to blend, take it out of the highlights and just soften the areas that it's blended. So if I move this little slider here on the top, if I go all the way, you can see how that color goes away. All right, and if I go the other way, you can see that it comes out of the shadows. So if I just want to make it look a little bit more realistic, what I can do is hold on to the Option key and click on that slider, and I can separate it so it feathers it a little bit and just makes it a lot more realistic. And I can do that with the other side as well, holding the Option on a Mac, Alt on a Windows, click on those little sliders, and just slide in, and I can just reduce some of that color in the shadows there. Okay, and so now I've got something that's looking a lot more realistic, and the transitions are a lot smoother. So I've got my sky, and then I've replaced the color in the water there. So now I've got, a slightly better looking sky. And now, because I've got this all in a folder, I can go further if I wanted to. So let's say I still think that this sunset is looking a little bit too saturated. I can come in now and continue editing my sky once it's in place. And maybe I want to add a hue saturation color and just target these areas here. So I can get the color picker and say, I think these are a bit too saturated. So I can now take the reds and just desaturate them a titch, somewhere like that, just so it's not as, bright and in my face. And then I can invert that layer mask and just brush in the areas that I wanted to desaturate with white. Oops, there we go. And that just desaturates those areas a little bit. So, and you can toggle on and off. So you can see right there that it's not quite as bright. All right, so there you go. So that's the new AI sky replacement action in Photoshop. I think it's great. I think you just want to be careful when you're using it, but I think you don't need to ever use Luminar Pro again. And I think suddenly the idea of changing a sky and is just got so much better.